Alright, what's going on? It's your boy Gregory Cooper and I'm back with another video, man. Look for my stars, so I'm not going nowhere. Alright, so this video is going to be very different. And if you're a subscriber of mine, then you know my typical content is sneaker related, fashion related, recent pickup related, sometimes food and some vlogging in there, but the bulk of my content being around sneakers and fashion. But as I just get older, I'm wanting to expand my content to like different conversations that I actually have, because like although I do love talking about sneakers and fashion, there is so much more to my life than just sneakers and fashion. And if you're not aware, June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. So I just feel like this was a perfect time to kind of like introduce this type of content just to see what the reception is. I feel like this is a conversation that only as time goes on, the conversation is becoming more important to talk about mental health. So whether you are a man or you identify as a woman or however you identify, I feel like the conversation around mental health is only growing because times are only getting weirder, especially like with AI, everything economically, politically that's going on in the world. It's just getting into a weird space, and I feel like everyone's just trying to figure out how to navigate their mental. So I will be doing a 3-part series covering different topics when it comes to like mental health. I feel like it's kind of hard to tackle mental health as a whole just because like there's so many different pockets of mental health and things that can play on mental health or like depression. So like I want to break it into 3 different videos and talk about different things in my life, because similar to how like when I make a sneaker review, I'm helping someone make a more informed decision about a purchase they're going to make. I want to start making more content about, you know, how I dealt with my mental health, going to therapy, how I came out of situations, because like if I can help you make a more informed decision based on a purchase for a sneaker, some of the things I feel like I've been through and some of the things I've been able to come out of, I feel like if I can help you get out of a situation, whether it's a death in your family or a death of a loved one or depression or like, what's been my experience with therapy, like, and I can help guide you into a path of bettering your mental health, I feel like that's even better than fucking selling you a pair of shoes or, trying to convince you to buy a pair of shoes. So like, I'm definitely going to, do more of this, but I feel like this was a perfect time just giving, the highlight for this month. So part 1 of this series is going to be covering grief. Now, just growing up, I feel like grief and how people deal with, a death in the family or a death of a loved one, death of a friend, like I've seen people deal with it on different levels. And grief, as they say, is like more like a textbook thing, comes in 5 stages. The first stage being denial, the second stage being anger, bargaining is the third, depression is the fourth, and the last and final thing that everyone should want to strive to get to is acceptance. And not acceptance of like, I've accepted they're gone and I'm never gonna think about them again, but like acceptance of like, they're gone and I can deal with it and I can move on with my life. Because sometimes when it comes to, death and grief, like you feel like, or I personally felt like I couldn't move on because like, how do I move on? And this person was so important in my life. I'm supposed to just go through life without them. It just felt weird. And like being a kid, I didn't know how to really fully grasp that. And like the people around me didn't know how to grasp it either. So we're all just like dealing with it on our own in a sense. But before I get into that, I have to kind of just give a little bit more context to why I'm starting off with grief before I get to how I dealt with it or how I, came to that point of like acceptance. So being an African-American male in the United States, I've dealt with grief way too many times. And I can't even count on my hands how many times I've lost somebody, not just like somebody I went to school with and like we had a conversation here and there, or like somebody I saw at a party. Like I can't even count on my hand anymore how many people who are close to me who have passed, whether it do be to car accident, a shooting, disease. Like I've seen it in so many forms when it comes to like death. And like death really consumed me to the point where like, I didn't personally think I was gonna make it to 21. I'm 28 now, I'll be 29 in a couple months. It's a sick mindset, but like, I didn't think I was gonna make it to 21. Just because like a lot of people I was growing up with, they didn't live to see their 18th birthday. I know some people who weren't even able to buy a legal drink. So like I was so consumed with death, so much so that like when I graduated college, and it's a moment of celebration, it's a moment of like, I finally finished this, you know, I paid all this money to go to school and it's finally done. Like typically when people graduate college, they decorate their graduation cap to commemorate something in college. It could be your dorm room number, friends you met, the field you're about to get into. But me, being the person who's been consumed by death my entire life, I decorated my graduation cap with everyone I've lost in my life that was important. And it's over 12 names on that cap, and I'm barely only just turning 21. So progressing the story forward, I graduate college December 2019, and I'm thinking I'm about to get into the job force. I'm ready to get my dream job. But we all know going into 2020, what happened, especially during March and April, I feel like that's when it really kicked off. The pandemic happened. I got furloughed from the job I was working at the time. And like, just like everybody else in the world, I was left to just stay within the confines of the home. And I don't know if this experience is shared with anybody else, but like the pandemic, although it was great for me because I ended up getting into the field of content creation, I ended up posting more on social media. And it's weird because that when I think about my life prior to 2020, I was very anti-social media. I wasn't really on it heavy like I am now. So it's just weird to see like that switch. But during the pandemic, I caught myself many times on the kitchen floor, 2 a.m. in the morning. You know, I lived in the house with my mom and my auntie and her son. And like, I would go in the kitchen because it was separated from everything else. And I would sit there and I would cry. 2 a.m. in the morning, 3 a.m. in the morning. And I didn't have an explanation for why I was crying. Like nothing affected me that day. I wasn't, you know, dealing with anything from the like, you know, like it wasn't nothing that triggered it. It just like, it came out of nowhere. And that was a more than once occasion. So then one night it happened again around 2 a.m., 3 a.m. I'm on the floor, I'm crying. So when that next morning I woke up and I told my mom, I was like, I need to go see a therapist. And, you know, just growing up in a Black household, and I feel like it's getting better now, like definitely getting better now. But back then, like, you know, talking about mental health in the Black household wasn't really talked about because like that person was probably dealing with mental health and they didn't address it. So like they always thought like, you know, you could get through it, whether it just be through religion or, you know, just talking to family. But, you know, one thing about me, especially, I feel like that, you know, added on to my stress as a kid and added on to like, you know, my depression as a whole is like, I never wanted to burden anybody with, you know, what I was going through because I know other people are dealing with other stuff. People have their own things going on. I may have a cousin that might have passed, but, you know, that cousin is somebody's son. So like, who am I to go to that person and pour so much onto them with, you know, what I'm going through and how I feel about it. And they're grieving a son. Like that's a different feeling because, you know, if I'm talking to the mother, you birthed that person, he's gone. So it's like, I never wanted to burden other people with what I was going through. So I just kept it in a bottle. I was like, kept a lid on it. And, you know, if, you know, hindsight is 2020 or I forget what that phrase is, but like, if I could look back at it now, I think I had started to bottle up so much that like, when I didn't understand why I was up at 2 a.m. crying on the floor, is because that cap started to leak. It started to leak bad. And there would be moments in my life where, you know, I should have picked it up, but like me just being a kid, I didn't know what it was. Like there's moments in my life where I blew up on my mom because like she told me I couldn't do something, like, and that cap just opened up a little bit and I blew up on my mom for no reason. Or like I blew up on this person or I blew up on this person. And I never could grasp it because like no one ever taught me how to deal with my emotions. So like me thinking like, oh, I just need to be a man because like, you know, that's the rhetoric that people, you know, pass along, especially within like the community that I was raised in. Like, you gotta be a man, you can't cry, you can't show emotions. I was like, okay, cool. Let me just keep tightening the cap and let me just keep storing stuff in there and tightening the cap. So I sought out a therapist. And the first therapist I had, terrible. I mean, just completely awful, bro. I'm like, there are 2 occasions that ultimately led me to stop going to see her. And they both pertain around the same thing. So I was opening up about a very traumatic thing I experienced in my life. And I'm like looking down, I'm crying, I'm looking down. And when I looked up, she was on her phone. She was like, and I just remember being in that moment, being like, this is why I don't open up to people, because people don't care. And like, had it not been me and had it been somebody else, they wouldn't have even sought out another therapist because their first experience with trying to talk to somebody and trying to, you know, open up about their feelings, somebody's texting. And like, that don't feel cool, bro. Especially like when you're talking about some real deep stuff, looking up after you're crying and you're talking about something and that person's texting, I just remember I stopped crying. She was like, are you done talking about it? I was like, yeah. And I just stood up and I walked out, bro. Like, it was nothing else to talk about. I was done after that. But luckily enough, 2 months later, I did find another therapist. And that lady I recommended her to my homie. I don't know if he recommended her to somebody else, but like, she was so good at her job. Just because like she was able to, and it's like, it's not groundbreaking. The things that she told me, it wasn't groundbreaking. It wasn't like so philosophical that like, I just, I couldn't believe she was saying it. But like, the thing that has stuck with me since she was my therapist, and this was back in like 2021, so it's been like almost 4 years since I went to therapy. The thing that stuck with me for so long, she said, when I was explaining to her my life and things I've been through and like the things that like really impact my life and stop me from moving forward, she said, that's not normal. And you shouldn't accept that as normal because that's not the norm. And like, I feel like growing up sometimes, being in a minority community, you kind of start to think that things are normal because like, if I can extend my hand out and I could touch my cousin, I'm like, man, my dad in jail. And then he'd be like, oh yeah, my dad too. And if I could extend my hand out, amongst colleagues in middle school, high school, and I'm like, man, one of my cousins got shot. And they'd be like, your cousin got shot too? Like, then just as a kid and just like not really understanding what's going on, I started to just accept that as that's the norm. Everybody's going to experience that. So like, what makes me so unique to sit here and crash out about it? And I think that also aided in me not addressing my emotions, just because like, I'm like, okay, if everybody going through this and shit, like that's what it is. Like, I just have to accept it. So the therapist saying that's not normal, I think that opened the floodgates to like me just being completely vulnerable with my therapist. And like what she did was, since there's like 12 names on my graduation cap of people I've lost who were close to me, each session was a different person and me properly trying to grieve that person. And again, grief looks different for everyone. So like the issue and why I couldn't get to the point of acceptance with, grieving a loved one was because I always thought that I could have did something about it. One of my cousins fell asleep at the wheel. I always thought, damn, if I just been in the car, I could have like shook him and I could have woke him up and he would have been fine. One of my cousins literally got shot a block away from me. So much so that like when the gunshots went off, I heard them. I thought they were fireworks. Me and my other cousin, we laughed it off. We get to the main road, we see a car go vroom right past us. And then we see another car pull up and a dude gets out the car and he like, yeah. And he popping it. He flexing like, oh yeah, I just killed who was ever in that car. He gets in the car, he busts a U-turn, go out the other way. We literally ride our bikes. We can't believe that just happened. We get to the house. It's literally like, bro, and I'm not trying to make a joke of it, but it literally felt like a Tyler Perry movie. Cause like we about to get in the house and we about to go tell my auntie and my grandma, like, we can't believe what we just saw. And as she's coming out, she's like, your cousin just got shot in the head. And literally everything else in my mind just went blank. That is the first time that's the first time and the only time that's ever happened in my life. As soon as I heard your cousin just got shot, everything else in my mind went blank. Because it was so fucked up because like I had just saw him that morning. Like that morning, he was his typical self. He was cracking jokes. He said he'd be back later, everything. Like he said he was on his way back and it happened. And I thought like, damn, had I just been in the car, I could have probably noticed the dude that was pulling up. I probably could have told him like, let's speed off and we could have got away. Or, my grandmother passed away of cancer. And I was like, had I just been there that night, maybe I could have maybe she was like trying to get something, maybe try to reach for medicine. I always thought I could have did something about it, bro. And that stopped me to get into the point of acceptance. And like every time I would explain a situation when it came to a loved one, like even my homeboy Chris in college fell asleep at the wheel. And I'm like, damn, had I just been in the car with him, had he just been on the phone, I could have called him and I could have kept him up. And like, she was like, you couldn't have done anything about that. You couldn't have stopped the bullet. You weren't in the car, so you couldn't have woken him up. And like, again, it's not groundbreaking stuff she's saying. It's not so philosophical that I'm sitting here like, it's not like some Da Vinci, like Aristotle. Like, she's literally just saying, like, you couldn't have done anything about that situation. And you have to come to terms with that. And I think that is how I ultimately came to the point of acceptance. And I know everyone is going to grieve different. Some people might start initially at acceptance, but then they might go back to denial. Some people might start at, you know, being combative and arguing, and then they go, like, grief is not a linear path, is what I'm trying to say. Everyone is going to grieve different. Everyone's going to have different reasons why it's affecting them. And also, even once you get to the point of acceptance, it doesn't mean you're not going to have moments where you think about that person again. Like, even though I've accepted the death of my grandmother, my cousins, you know, loved ones, friends and all, like, even though I've accepted them, that doesn't mean, like, you know, one Tuesday, you know, March 5th, 2024, they don't just pop in my mind for some reason. But when they pop in my mind, I have to realize that, like, and I have to remind myself, I couldn't have done anything about that. That situation is out of my control. And I think that's how I really dealt, and I was able to get to the point of just, like, accepting that they're gone. And I think what makes it like just so interesting is, again, it's not so deep. It's not so, like, because you're going to get to your own conclusion in your journey when it comes to grief. But, like, the conversation about, like, getting to acceptance or, like, getting to a point where you're okay, it's not so deep. Like, I don't really know how to explain it. It's not so deep to where, like, you think you need, like, the perfect Bible scripture to explain this, or you need the perfect, you know, message sent to you from a loved one. Like, it's not going to be what you think it is that helps you get to the point of acceptance. Because even when she taught me that, and, like, even when I understood it, it still took a lot of work for me to even get to the point of being like, okay, this is what it is. Like, I feel like sometimes people also think that once you go to therapy, the work is done. It's not done. I have to make sure I regulate and check myself all the time when it comes to, like, situations, because in college, a reason, like, and I'm not, like, college was great for me, but, you know, an aspect of college that really affected me was, like, you know, this was still during my bottling up stage, and I was, you know, building everything up. But, like, let's say I had a test coming up, and I study my ass off for it. I get to the test and I bomb it. Now I have this anxiety, I have this depression, because, like, damn, I studied all this time for this, you know, this test, and I fucked up, and, like, now I feel bad. So, like, now I have this, like, dark cloud over me. But then, like, the way the mind will work, it knows that, like, now I have this anxiety, I have this sadness. Now it's like, okay, let me add into it. So now it's like I have the dark cloud, but now there's, like, a 10x dark cloud over that, feeding, because, like, it saw the moment and the opportunity to leak in, like, bad thoughts. And, like, now it's like I'm thinking about a cousin I lost. I'm thinking about my grandma I lost. I'm thinking about, you know, somebody I lost. And, like, it would mess me up for so long, and it would take me a long time to get out of those periods of feeling like shit, bro. I used to feel like shit, bro. I used to feel bad about this stuff. And it's so great now being on the opposite end of it, because, like, it shows that you can come out of that. And, like I said, bro, I had 12 names on my cap, but that's not even all the people, because, like, the 12 are, like, really important, but there is 6, 8 more people I could have added just, like, through experience. I'm one of those people, like, if I meet you and we have a good, like, interaction, or you make me laugh and I remember that moment in my head, I care about you now. So, like, you know, rest in peace JR, rest in peace Amari. Like, I went to high school with these dudes, and they committed suicide. And it's like, damn, like, even though we weren't as the closest of homies, I still think about these people, bro. And, like, again, it's just like I had to deal with it as, like, they weren't close friends. I couldn't have done anything about it. But it's like, there's so many more people in my life who have passed away who weren't, like, so important in my life, and, like, you know, were there with me growing up, but, like, they were still a part of my life in some aspect. And I feel like I'm kind of, like, getting long-winded with it, but, like, my personal journey with grief, the thing that helped me get to the point of acceptance was realizing and acknowledging that I couldn't have done anything about any of the situations of the 12 people that were just like, that I've lost, that were just important to me. I couldn't have tapped your shoulder to wake up, on the road. I couldn't have stopped a bullet. I couldn't have stopped cancer from spreading. I couldn't have, I couldn't have done, I literally couldn't have done anything. Like, it was going to happen. And that's the fucked up thing about life, bro. Like, you're going to experience something to this magnitude. And I think what makes it really bad is like, some of the people I lost in my life didn't even see their 18th birthday. They weren't even able to buy a legal drink. Like, it's just like, those deaths really hurt too, because it's like you had so much more life to live and it was gone. But yeah, like, this is not something that I want like sympathy for. This is not something, because I've dealt and I've, been able to get to a point where like, I feel okay about it. I'm not wanting sympathy. I'm not wanting somebody to feel bad for me. I'm not wanting any of that. What I really want is to show that like, you can come out of that situation that you're in. You can come out of that situation that you're dealing with. It just takes actually doing the work, and you have to address the emotions head on, bro. Ignoring it is not going to be beneficial to you, and it's also not going to be beneficial to people around you, because then you just go end up blowing up on those people around you. It's going to leak through somewhere. Whether it be work, your boss say something you don't really like, that lid might crack open a little bit, and it might let out something that you don't even necessarily feel about them. It's just pent up aggression. It might be a relationship. It might be a family member. And I feel like it is best suited to talk to somebody who has the actual knowledge and who went to school and can actually, have an unbiased conversation with you about your upbringing to really bring out some of that stuff. So like, when that lid opens up, it's not just like like the floodgates ain't open and like, you're not just lashing out on people. So yeah, I just really want to show and like, let people know like, you can make it out of that situation. You can do something about how you feel about, death, grief in your life. Like it's brighter on the other side. I would say that, because prior to me having a therapist and prior to me continuing to do the work on myself, life was dark. And like, I'm not saying life was bad, but like the moments where, it wasn't great, like it really showed it wasn't great and it really showed it was bad. But like, I have great experiences in my life. I have a great support system, a great network of people around me. But then some people don't, bro. And I feel like, I definitely, send out my heart and can, for anybody who doesn't have a great support system, like, I don't ever know what that life is like. So I definitely recommend, like, if you don't have anybody you can talk to a therapist in some form. Like, you have to talk to somebody. That's just what I think. Like, I think you have to talk to somebody. Somebody has to be in your corner. And like, I don't know. So yeah, I feel like I'm rambling. But again, hopefully this message, is heard by somebody who's going through something, who thinks they can't make it out of this. And I hope you hear it and you are able to pick up something from this conversation to help you on your journey of getting to that point of acceptance. And again, acceptance is not simply being like, okay, it happened, I'm moving on, I'm not gonna think about them anymore. Acceptance is like, okay, they passed, I understand that, I have these dope memories with them, I can always think about those times, maybe I can write it down so I don't forget. I may have like a piece of memorabilia from them. Because for my homie, I got a skateboard, I got his blanket, my grandma, I got a tattoo, I got, all this memorabilia stuff. Like, it's a journey for sure. I just hope that, like, getting to that point of acceptance for everyone, because that in-between space can be a little awkward. Sorry if this was jumbled. Again, I don't really talk about this too much, so like, I'm not so precise with my words like I would with like a sneaker, but I think this is a conversation that needs to be had in some degree. But yeah, without further ado, I'll catch you on the next one.
But I love the way you work it. Hey, I love the way you work it for me.